What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the extended cut, minimally edited podcast version of today's episode, where we're going to tackle your most frequently asked question related to marketing your private practice. Originally, I filmed an episode this week where I answered all your top questions related to marketing your private practice. I went ahead and filmed that episode, and it was way too long. So I think I'm going to break it up into a series, answering just one of your top questions at a time per video, which makes a lot more sense, I think. I had put a poll on Instagram inviting you all to share your top questions related to marketing your private practice. And for today's episode, I'm just going to respond to your most frequently asked question. And that was, what are the most effective strategies for marketing your private practice? As per usual in the extended cut version of this episode, I'll get into some more specifics, share some more anecdotes, and just give a more nuanced, well-rounded picture of my response to your question. So based on the poll that I put on Instagram, the category of question that was asked most often by far was, what are the most effective marketing strategies? What a question. I think this is fascinating because a lot of times I think it could be easy for us to think, just tell me what the most effective marketing strategy is and how to implement it, and I will do it so I can fill my practice. And though there is something to be said about that, like some marketing strategies are going to be more effective in general than others, we're going to touch on that a little bit later in this episode, I think it's more important to ask what marketing strategy is going to be the best fit for you and your clients, and also how do you implement that strategy effectively. For any marketing strategy out there, it's possible to do your best at implementing it and finding out that it's not working for you, it's not filling your practice. So there's more to the story than just saying, tell me which marketing strategies are most effective. I did make an episode a couple years ago now where I invited you all to share what your primary marketing strategy was, like the main avenue that kept your practice full if you were in private practice. And I can share your responses there, but then I'll have a big caveat after the fact. So if you didn't catch that episode, the top strategy folks referenced for how they filled their practice, with 53% of people responding to that poll giving this answer, was through online directories. And I remember specifically folks referencing Psychology Today most often when they were talking about filling their practice through an online directory. And then after that, 25% of people responded saying that networking was their top way of filling their practice. And then all the responses after that had only a few trickle of responses. Some people said speaking events, SEO, and just other miscellaneous ways that folks filled their practice. So we might hear something like that and hear like, oh, 53% of therapists in private practice, at least of those who responded to that poll from 2 years ago, filled their practice through online directories. Sign me up for an online directory and let me get my practice full. But it's not so simple. It's been a while since I've had a listing on an online directory, but at least back in the day when I did, this was true for me, and I've heard this story from others as well, where you might go through all the trouble of setting up an online directory and getting either no referrals or just the tiniest trickle of referrals from the online directory, not enough to fill your practice. And that's not a bash on online directories. There's any number of reasons why that could be the case. It could be things that are a little bit external to you, like if you're working in a really oversaturated market and there's just way more therapists on the online directory than there is demand, then yeah, there's going to be at least some people who can't fill their practice through the online directory. And if you live somewhere else where the supply matches the demand a little better, maybe an online directory might be enough for you to keep your practice full. And even with that said, for an online directory, there's still a strategy to employ to optimize your online directory so that you can hopefully fill your practice, even if you are in a place that's more overly saturated. So I wouldn't want somebody to hear a stat like the one I just named and think, oh, here's the top way people fill their practice. Let me just go ahead and do that, and I should fill my practice too. So I'd like to change this question. Rather than asking the question of what marketing strategy should I use to fill my practice, or what's the most effective marketing strategy out there for private practice, I think the most important question to ask is how? How do I utilize whatever marketing strategy I'm using? How do I use it well? This is the question that we often miss. And this is also the harder question to answer, because we can't just say, oh, use this marketing strategy, it'll fill your practice every time. It's whatever marketing strategy you're using, how do you utilize it well? And the answer to that question has a lot more detail, a lot more nuance, and does take work. I've seen folks have success with an array of marketing strategies, and still again, others who try to mimic the marketing strategy they see somebody else use and then it flops. In other words, just because maybe you see all your friends filling their practice through a certain marketing strategy, it doesn't mean that you have to go along with that and use the same marketing strategy yourself. So just to really drill this point home, here are a few questions to help you hone in on your marketing strategy. First, I'd ask, what marketing strategies do I actually like? Which strategies do I have a decent chance of maybe thriving at implementing? It's less helpful to use a cookie cutter strategy and say like, all these people are using this strategy, so I must use it too. Because if you don't like that marketing strategy, well, all that effort that you put into it is going to contribute to tiredness, potential for burnout, and you might also lose steam and have a lot of trouble kind of keeping up with that marketing strategy. But if there's a marketing strategy that maybe you're more skilled at, or you might actually even enjoy, then there's a much greater chance that you'll stay motivated to keep up with it. You'll seem more authentic as you show up in that particular pathway, and maybe you might even find it energizing or supportive to market your practice through an avenue that you like. Like case in point with private practice skills, you're either listening to this as a podcast episode or watching it on YouTube or something like that. I really like making these episodes, and if I didn't like making these episodes, there's absolutely no way I'd still be doing this 6.5 years later every single week. But I genuinely enjoy this, not just as a marketing strategy, but as a tool that I enjoy all by itself. And it just so happens to also promote this business, private practice skills. But it's sustainable even without that. There's an intrinsic enjoyment that I get from it. Now, of course, not every marketing strategy is going to be like the most super fun time you're going to have all day long implementing it. I mean, if I think of my therapy practice, which I primarily promote through SEO, I'm pretty skilled at SEO. I enjoy some aspects of it, but I'm not like getting up at 5 a.m. running to my computer so that I can draft that next blog post or anything like that. But it's something that is sustainable for me. I have enough skills and interest in SEO that I can implement it well. Okay, but it doesn't just stop there, because you might find a marketing strategy that you like, but there's more to it. So the next question I would ask is, where are my ideal clients likely to hang out at? Like, can I find a way to meet them wherever they are? Where would my ideal clients go if they were looking for a potential therapist? Like, for example, if you are working with younger people, they're more likely to maybe be on the internet or social media. Whereas, let's say if you work with folks who tend to lean towards an older demographic, maybe they're not hanging out on TikTok as much, but they might be able to find you through some other means, maybe through networking, word of mouth, that sort of thing. So it's helpful to kind of get a sense of like, where is my ideal client most likely to hang out at, and then bring that question together with your first question of like, what marketing strategies do I actually enjoy, and see where those two overlap. For my therapy practice, I figured I would have probably the best success finding my ideal clients through internet searches as well as through LGBTQ affirming churches. Each of those avenues appealed to slightly different clientele, because a lot of the clients that I really enjoy working with are still attending very much non-affirming churches, but are needing help with their gender or sexuality. So they're probably going to look online. They're probably not going to ask a friend. They probably don't know if there's a safe space anywhere else in their life to turn to ask for support with what they're dealing with. So having an internet presence felt highly valuable and one of the most likely areas where LGBTQ Christians might be looking for a therapist, especially at the time, like pre-TikTok and all that. But I did also do quite a bit of networking with local LGBTQ affirming churches. There were only a small handful of them at the time. I mean, unfortunately, that's still kind of the case. And so if I just reached out to the, 3 or 4 churches that were openly affirming and connected with the various clergy there, that was already a natural referral source, because a lot of them were already looking for places to refer to and not knowing who was safe to refer to. And it was similar but different with private practice skills, where back in 2018, when I first started private practice skills, it was few and far between to find other therapists speaking about private practice on YouTube. And gratefully, there are now all kinds of resources of therapists talking about private practice on YouTube, and every single form of social media. It's almost too much, but I'd rather it be that way than just having absolutely no free information available out there at all. So because I was often turning to YouTube to look for information about private practice and then coming up short, it seemed quite likely that my target demographic for private practice skills, who looked a lot like me, honestly, would also be wanting to turn to YouTube to look for similar resources as I was, and it seemed to make sense for me to show up there. But before we keep going, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Paubox. It wasn't until a couple years ago that I first learned that even with assigned BAA, Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 can't guarantee that 100% of the messages going in and out are HIPAA secure. So without a tool like Paubox operating on the back end, it's almost impossible to stay HIPAA secure unless you forego email altogether. Even if you exclusively use a secure portal to discuss protected health information with your clients, there's still going to be potential clients reaching out initially, and also some clients who will still try to email you because, I don't know, they forgot their password for their portal and they're trying to reach out. So with a tool like Paubox, you can guarantee that every single message is protected. Paubox is super easy to set up, and it's kind of a one and done situation. Like, you just spend a few minutes initially setting it up, and then it's just continuously quietly running in the background. Paubox offers a 14-day free trial to everybody, and they're offering a special discount to Private Practice Skills listeners. Just use coupon code SKILLS at checkout in order to receive $250 off your first year of Paubox. That's Paubox spelled Paubox. Thank you again to Paubox for sponsoring today's episode, and now on with the rest of the list of questions to ask. And then the third question that I think applies to every marketing strategy, regardless of which one you're implementing, is how do I show up most authentically in that marketing space? How do I instill confidence in my ideal clients that I am able to help them with what they need help with? Whether you're using social media, SEO, online directories, networking, speaking gigs, any array of marketing strategies, it's really important that you are showing up as you and bringing your genuine passion about your work to the forefront and how you're communicating with other people. And then within that, we're focusing on building trust with potential clients and how we're communicating so that it's clear to them how you're able to help support them with what they need help with. Now, understanding more about who you are authentically is definitely a much larger question than we can fully tackle in one episode here, because it entails knowing more about who you are and your brand and how you serve people well. However, if you can spend some time really getting to know the answers to those questions, then it becomes a lot easier to start mapping your authentic self and your brand onto whatever marketing channel you're leaning into. I do think it's really worthwhile to spend quite a bit of time on this step if it's unclear what it looks like to be authentic to yourself and how you serve the folks you work with well, because that's going to be what sets you apart and makes you you, and not just, a dime a dozen therapist. But my point in saying all of that is essentially, like, I don't want a situation where you see that a bunch of other therapists are doing things one way. Let's say, for example, you see all the other therapists on social media and you assume that then you need to be on social media. And not only that, but you need to also kind of follow a similar equation for how you show up on social media as you see the other therapists doing, and kind of create a cookie cutter replica of what other people are doing. Because then what we just end up having is a whole bunch of noise, and potentially you're not even showing up authentically as yourself. So it's much more worthwhile, whether it's social media or some other avenue, to make sure that you're showing up in that space as you, and potentially whatever it is that sets you apart from other therapists, to let that be what you lean into more, rather than copying whatever other people are doing. And then the last question, after you've kind of honed in on a particular marketing path and asked if you can show up authentically in a way that instills trust and hope in potential clients, is to ask, what aspects of the mechanics of that marketing strategy can I hone in on? Can I grow in? Can I get taught by somebody who knows how to utilize this particular marketing strategy successfully, so that I can implement those same strategies myself? With any marketing approach, even the old school ones, there's some level of strategy, mechanics, even technology that goes behind it so that we can set ourselves up for success. I mean, even if we're just networking and using word of mouth. There are strategies to network well, and there's strategies that might not be as effective. So if we can find what those mechanics are, then it's going to help set us up for success. SEO was largely foreign to me when I first really started digging into it in 2016, but I did learn about SEO at the time completely for free. I watched lots of YouTube videos. I learned about some of SEMrush's tools, Neil Patel's tools. I will link to those below. They're all free. If you want them to just use the free trial, you can totally do that. That's what I did. And I just kind of fumbled my way through learning about SEO and did some trial and error. There were definitely errors, let's be clear. But as I kept practicing, I got better and better and better at SEO, because you start to see what performs better and what's showing up for which keywords, and kind of leaning into the same strategies further. And likewise with private practice skills, I learned a whole lot about how to make YouTube videos by watching YouTube videos about how to make YouTube videos and have success on YouTube. And I did a lot of trial and error, but even though there was a lot of error along the way, I learned as I went and I improved as I went. I was doing things on a budget, so I had to be a little bit scrappy, be okay with a little bit more error in the trial and error ratio. But if you have the budget and you want to spend it this way, then you can sort of expedite that process, maybe skip some of the errors in the trial and error process, because you're paying someone to support you and sort of know what mistakes to avoid. And when all is said and done, if you're just not sure where to start with your chosen marketing avenue, I would suggest getting to know peers who are utilizing that marketing strategy and just picking their brain, seeing if they're willing to share what they've learned. Again, it doesn't mean that you need to cookie cutter, copy and paste whatever strategy they've utilized, but I imagine you will learn a lot by hearing about their experience, especially if you can check in with a few different folks, because you'll start to see what things pop up as themes or things that folks found helpful across the board, and what things were kind of more nuanced and depended on the unique individual's situation. If you don't just have peers readily available that you can straight up ask about their marketing strategy, you can also check out online forums. There's spaces like Facebook groups, especially specialized Facebook groups that are for therapists or about marketing for therapists, or even better if it's kind of niched down into your shared niche, to ask other folks how they marketed their practice, how they found success with that marketing avenue, and things like that. You can also check out Reddit. There's email listservs. I'm sure there are other spaces as well that I'm less familiar with. So even if you don't have any connection points immediately, you can go and find them fairly readily. If you're feeling like, I actually still have no idea what marketing strategy could fit for me, I do have a training focused on helping you with that. It's called the Client Attraction System. It's designed to help you get to know your niche, what is most authentic to you, and then help you build towards a marketing strategy, testing it out, gathering data about how it's working, making tweaks, and all of that. So if you're interested, I'll link to the Client Attraction System in the description of this episode. Well, I think this might be a good spot to leave it for now. Thank you to you all for submitting your questions. It makes videos like this possible, so I appreciate it. Also, if you're listening to this episode in real time, tax season is upon us. Like, taxes are due in like a couple of weeks after this episode goes up. I wanted to let you know that my friends at Herd are putting on a seminar for those of you who need a little bit of help to get across that tax finish line successfully. And it's coming up this Tuesday, April 1st at 9 a.m. Pacific time. This is a totally free webinar. Anyone can join. And in this webinar, the tax pros from Herd will cover the basics of bookkeeping and taxes for therapists to help you finish tax season strong. I will be there. Feel free to sign up at the link below. And even if you can't make it at 9 a.m. Pacific time on April 1st, you can sign up and catch the replay later. So it's still worth signing up even if you can't make it. Well, I hope you found today's episode helpful, especially if you were looking for some help marketing your private practice. If you still have lingering questions about how to market your practice, feel free to leave a comment below and you might just see me address your question in a future episode. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.